Hey, I'm happy to be here today with you. I wanted to talk to you about what happens when you get triggered. And what we mean by triggered, it's this place that we get to where we feel our energy rising, where we feel our upset, where it's almost like a little bit of we're out of control. Like it something is driving us to respond not from our adult selves, but really from the painful or the hurt child self. So recently I've been personally in my own trigger with actually a department store who can't seem to get my order right, can't seem to get it delivered to me. I mean, it's just been one conversation after another with people that are unhelpful, can't help, can't, get me to the right place. And with every call, I find myself like feeling this in my power center and my chest and my throat. So I'm very aware I'm in a trigger. And when I'm in a trigger, my level of calmness, my level of being civil, my level of being able to manage from my adult self kind of falls away. So, what I want you to think about is what kinds of things trigger you. So, if I go back to the store incident that I'm still involved with, I feel like what triggers me about that is the first four people you talk to working off of a script. So even though you're giving them the information, they can't really hear you. And that again, it sort of triggers me back to my a childhood wound, like not being heard. And so over time, when you're interacting more and more from that place, more and more your my energy rises and I become less and less rational. Let's just call a spade a spade. That's what happens. And I'll become more aggressive sometimes, or I'll feel like oh, this is never going to resolve itself. I should just forget this. So I'll just want to take myself away from the situation. Um, or I lose faith or trust in people. Like, how can something be so poorly managed? Like, I don't get it. So my adult self doesn't get it, but really my child self is yelling, how am I not being heard and why are my needs not being met? So those are the two things that throw me into a trigger. Now I feel like I'm not being heard or my needs aren't being met. The power of knowing what throws you into a trigger is that when you come up or into a situation or a conversation or in a relationship, and suddenly you feel sometimes people will get the body cues. Like I told you, my stomach gets in a knot, my chest gets heavy, my throat gets sore. So those are my body cues. But then I'll get fuzzy in my mind. And it's almost like either the louder I talk, I believe that I'll be heard. The more forceful I talk, I believe I'll be heard. Like there's this very young childlike response to what is going on. So, for you, what I want you to do is think about what gets you, what throws you into a trigger. Is it being heard? Is it being seen? Is it being not listened to? Is it chaos? Is it something where you're very controlling because controlling your environment kept you safe? There are all different variations of what throws each of us into our triggers. Now, the power of knowing it is knowing and becoming aware of it, and whether you can stop it in the moment or not. The more you become aware of it and the more you release the energy around the trigger, the more sort of compassion you can have, the more patience you can have, and the more present that you can stay, which then leads you to a sense of calm. So it begs the question, well, what can I do? How do I discover my triggers? And I'll say discovering your triggers are quite easy. If you're listening to this, you probably already know two or three of them just by how I described my triggers. You're going to think about situations or people that you find that you have a physical reaction to, and it's not a good one. It's like either a tightness or a stress or some sort of physical reaction. And then jot those down. The next thing you can do is that you look at who you interact with that makes you feel tight and modulated. And what I mean by modulated is you really have to think about what you're going to say. You really have to be careful with your words. Or maybe it's just somebody that shows up very different than you. So today I was working in one of my groups, and this woman was saying, I just felt my power dissipating. And I said, I know your energy is so low. And I asked her what was going on, and she said, well, I was running one of my women's group, and this woman wasn't talking. And I said, okay, so you have a belief that talking means she's participating and she's getting some value out of it. But what if your belief was some people are going to talk it out loud, some people are going to go internal and process whatever you're asking them to think about? And one way isn't right and the other way wrong. It's just the way people are. So she might be getting a ton out of what you're saying, but because you carry a certain belief, you're labeling it as either she's not good or you're not good, one way or the other. Person in my program labeled it, I'm not good, I'm not getting through, there's something wrong here, I can't be as powerful as I want to be. In that situation, she gave her power to the woman that wasn't responding in the way that she wanted the person to respond to. Sometimes when we get triggered, it's because whoever we're in front of is not responding in the way that we want them to respond. And if we can pause and ask, oh, what are they doing that's getting me all upset? Oh, maybe they're speaking their voice. Maybe they're not speaking their voice. Maybe they're taking a stand for themselves. Maybe they're choosing to leave the situation. Who knows? Like, there could be a whole bunch of things. But analyze it for yourself. Because if you can start stringing together what triggers you, and then you get to the why, then you're empowering yourself to change. See, a trigger is called a trigger because it's like this instant reaction, and most of the time we don't have control over it. And most of the time we're being triggered to our younger selves. So we're not acting like we would normally act. But if you understand what your triggers are, then you can do some releasing, meaning releasing the energy, because that's what's going on. When you feel out of control, it's not because your adult brain is saying, get out of control with this person, yell at them on the other side of the phone, they're only trying to do their job, right? It's because you're back in your child state and you're railing against something that was really painful or hurtful for you. So the first thing is to identify those areas for yourself. The second is to give yourself grace when it happens. Because even though I knew I was getting triggered the other day, I could not stop that train. And I think it was because I had talked to like 4 people before I finally got triggered. It was like, oh my God, I was in the situation too long. So the parts of me that got healed before helped me. But the deep parts, I was in the situation so long that stuff started to come up. Again, the idea is to understand your triggers, know where they came from, maybe know why you're holding these triggers. And then you have to make a conscious choice. Do you want to change? Do you want to let this go? Do you want to create a new reality for yourself? Because we create our reality, and we create it at any time of day or night or moment of our lives. We perceive things and we create our reality around how we perceive things. So if you're clear, oh, I'm getting triggered, this person's taking my voice away. That's how I must have held it by the time I got to the fourth person. They're not hearing me. I don't have a voice. So then I go to this very empowered state, which is probably how my younger self felt, not being heard, and I start just getting myself all worked up. So understand that, know what your reactions are so you can understand, oh, maybe your body is giving you cues. Some of us get body cues before we get the intellectual cue. Some of us, if the trigger is so big or old or so constant in our lives, the adult brain can't kick in because the child brain's running the show. So once you understand all that, you give yourself grace and you say, now what can I do? Now what can I attend to? How do I want to shift in this moment? What do I need to let go of? So for me, it took me saying, you know what, this isn't helpful for you or I in this moment. I need to go. And I just hung up the phone. I was upset, I felt hurt, and I was furious. All three of those together. And I hung up the phone. Now, afterwards, I could go back and look at what got me so upset, why was I so furious, what was the beliefs around that situation. My younger self just wanted to throw a temper tantrum. They didn't listen. But you know what? The guy was probably listening, but he didn't respond in the way that I wished he did. So for me, the trigger was he didn't respond. He wasn't fulfilling my need. When you get clarity around that, then you can heal it. And how you heal it is that you imagine going back to your younger self and just filling that younger self with love, with their needs being met, with you just imagining, almost like reimagining how you were as a child. What were you allowed to do? In my case, I would close my eyes and reimagine that I talked to my mom and she goes, oh, yes, I understand what you need. Yes, we can do that. Let me support you. That's what I reimagined. Now, it's not real, right? I'm imagining it. But how we perceive things is what our minds know, and that's what drives our behaviors. So if I start telling the story or giving my mind like food every day of showing that I was listened to, I did get my needs met, over time, that's not going to trigger me anymore, because I'll hold it as I was listened to and I did get my needs met. Anger is a great tool because anger is really covering up your sadness. And sadness is about you feeling something, like either you feel that no one was listening, your needs didn't get met, you weren't heard, you didn't get the love you needed. So just take a moment and go to that anger and do two things. One is feel the different physical cues and say, am I getting any cues when I get angry? Like, what am I noticing going on in my body? And then the next thing is to say, what age am I when I get angry? Am I a 2-year-old? Am I a 10-year-old? Am I a 20-year-old? Am I a 5-year-old? Like, try to go to that earliest age, because I can guarantee you that's the first time you got wounded around your anger. Then what I want you to do is to imagine a different outcome. I want you to imagine how it would feel if you were, fill in the blank. How would it feel if you had your needs met? How would you feel if you got the love you wanted? How would you feel if somebody listened to you? And then let your mind feel it, see it, know it, because that's the new memory you're implanting. And the more we implant a new reality for ourselves, the less and less we get triggered. So I'm so curious about this because just in the last few weeks, I've noticed lots of people getting triggered. A lot of people get triggered around change. A lot of people get triggered around feeling out of control, or they feel like they can't control their own destiny, or somebody did something to them. Those are just cues for you to look into to say, oh, is that any of my issues going on here? But I can guarantee you, everyone that listens to this, you'll have way more than one trigger that goes on. But for the sake of trying to heal a trigger and to heal your own energy and to behave and act from a different place, I would say pick one that sort of takes you out of your game, and then do the steps that I said. Reimagine, let go of any energy. And oh, if you don't know how to let go of energy, a really cool way is, so when you feel the different tightness or discomfort in your body, it's because there's blocked energy. So a really easy way to let go of those blocked energies is to imagine, you could do this one of two ways. One is you can flow white light through you, and you're asking yourself to release whatever energy is in the way of you being the way you decide you want to be, rather than you living from the trigger. So that's one way. The second way, I love this way because it's sort of playful, and most of our triggers come from when we're kids. I'll give myself like a laser or a water gun or a big scoop, depending on what I'm feeling. And I say, okay, you have control over all the stuck energy in your body. I'm just gonna release it for myself. So if it's a scoop, I imagine myself scooping out the energy. If it's a laser, I imagine myself zapping the energy out of me. You get the gist. So you get to do it one or two ways, but sometimes your childlike self likes to use something that we used to use in our childhood. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're taking away a lot from these videos, especially this one, because I think when we are in a trigger, it threatens not only ourselves, but our ability to stay in our power, our ability to stay in love, our ability to stay in flow, our ability to stay in compassion and grace and openness, and most importantly, your ability to align with your soul. That's why it feels so bad. It's like you disconnect from that soul alignment because you're kind of living from that child place. All right. Have a fantastic day, everyone. I hope you enjoy this, and leave me some comments. Take care. Bye.